Hello, everyone. It is time. I'm laughing because I've already done this opening like 3 or 4 times, but apparently I was streaming, so I wasn't recording it, and I was looking over wondering why it wasn't recording, and it just didn't click reading the word streaming, that's streaming and not recording. But now it is recording. I see it. It's great. We got the red dot and not the wavy red dot. It's all good. So here we go. We are 1 day away from VCT Champions Seoul playoffs kicking off. 8 teams left. And unfortunately, these videos are going to become much less frequent because we only have one representative left, and that's DRX. The Kings of Korea, the Kings of Pacific, they return. It's just like 2 or 3 years ago. All hope back to DRX. Who would have thought? Their opening matchup is against a very, very hot Sentinels. And this is a bit concerning, but it's not impossible. Before we dive into some details here, I think the biggest thing to note is I think this is going to be one of the toughest matchups. I actually think if DRX or even Sentinels, quite frankly, I think whoever wins this match goes really far. Like, I'm willing to almost say whoever wins this match goes to grand finals, like one way or another. That's how much I rate these teams and how much they're able to adapt. But also just the bracket, right? How it's panned out. I actually think if there were EMA teams or G2 up here in this bracket, then either Sen or DRX would have still had another very tough thing. But if they overcome each other, I think that gives them a huge momentum boost to eventually even topple whoever they might meet from the other side of the bracket. So this is me giving that respect to Sentinels. I mean, listen, I kept saying that it might be possible if they come back in form, and they did, and they trumped Gen G. They played that very well. But the reason I actually have some hope for DRX is that it has become very clear that Sentinels has done some amazing prep. Well, first of all, they changed their compositions, which allowed them to do prep and become flexible, right? Because your compositions no longer have a... no matter how strong it might be, or no matter how strong you think it might be, they don't have a very strict win condition like the Cypher Lock does. So they changed their composition, and then they've been able to anti-encounter, and then they've been able to do good prep. So all the credit to Sentinels for doing that prep, right? And I think them kicking off with that prep, kind of throwing their opponents off, and their opponents not catching on that's what's been happening, that's all credit to Sentinels, right? I mean, they came in with the prep, they came in with the pressure. So kudos to them. But guess what's different? Guess what's different about this version of DRX compared to all the other years? All the other years. This is the most unpredictable DRX, I would say, ever. Now, there's still some predictability, for sure. But they're definitely the most unknown version of DRX, right? The past DRXs, there was a textbook for the whole world to read, and they were just very good at it. It was a very, very thorough textbook, but you could read it if you wanted to. And eventually that's what would happen, because they would come in with, a pretty deep set play, playbook. But as the tournament goes on, you keep whittling down, and then you get to top 6 and you're out of ideas. So that used to happen with DRX, but I would say the current version, that doesn't happen. There's 2 reasons why. One, they just haven't had the time. They haven't had the time to build something new. They've had to go back to the basics and teach how to play like a team, how to have good spacing, how to trade for each other, and that's gotten pretty good, but I imagine that's a big bulk of it. But 2, that's enabled these players who already have a tendency to want to play pretty aggressively to be able to show a bit more flexibility, to go a little bit off the cuff, while still maintaining the very, very core fundamentals of attack FPS. So I'm going to argue that that's actually a bit of a benefit for DRX. Now, is it so big that alone carries them forward? No, I don't think so. But I do think that makes it a bit more even of a matchup than it normally would be. Quite frankly, against Sentinels, and I think against all the opponents now left in the bracket, it's going to be a race of who just does more prep, right? Who has a better understanding of your tendencies. And I think coming into the playoffs, DRX has a bit of that edge because, they qualified so early coming in through that upper bracket. So let's talk about the maps first. Now, coming into this matchup, we're going to have DRX, who is going to be the top seed, get to choose whether they start with the first pick or the first side pick, as they were coming in from the upper bracket of Group A, where Sentinels comes in for the decider match as the second place in Group B. So that means that generally DRX as most teams do, chooses team 2 if it's a best of 3, and they will be going second. So Sentinels will go first, and I think the Ascent ban is a bit of a no-brainer here for Sentinels. I think you expect that to see that come out. If it doesn't, I mean, I don't think you're concerned if you're DRX, but it's just like, listen, this is such a comfort map for DRX. It's such a comfort map for Mako. It's a comfort map for the staff. Buzz gets to play the Jet, gets to play the Operator, which he's been really firing up to try to prove to the world that it's no longer a problem for him at a global stage. And it's not like this was a go-to strong map for Sentinels even before when they were playing meta comps. So while I'm sure they've retooled the composition, and I'm sure Sentinels wouldn't mind playing against certain teams or in a best of 5, I don't think they're going to feel like they want to play it. Because here's the other thing, while there is tape of DRX playing it, it's from before Champions, right? So maybe things have changed there. Maybe they've added more layers to it. I don't know if you really want to mess around and find out. I don't think there's really any need when you've seen, a little bit of most of these other maps that are remaining. Now, when it comes to DRX's ban, there's a couple options. I think there's a world where they might ban the Lotus just because they've shown their chamber. They showed how they played it, what they prepped against Fnatic. Sentinels has now played against the chamber thanks to FPX here on the Lotus, and Sentinels has been looking really good on it since they came back to their old composition. However, if you don't ban it, this is like 100% getting picked. Like, this is getting picked. So in some ways, that makes the prep a lot more straightforward, in my opinion. That can be targeted. Now, I think they pulled it off pretty well and pretty tastefully against Fnatic. But now that Sentinels is a different team, they play a little differently on Lotus. They also have gotten a chance to play against the Chamber now on a big stage. Granted, different composition. FPX is running no duelist. But overall, right, still trying to make sure the chamber gets going and takes these greedy shots, things like that. So we'll see. But I have a feeling DRX, because they had more time, they might just say, hey, why take the risk on a map that we don't know what Sentinels is going to pull out either, where we can go into Lotus knowing that they're going to come in with this composition, they're going to have a couple things prepared against their chamber comp, and then we go from there. Because something, again, that has become a trend is you leave open the strong maps of your opponents. They're going to pick it. While they'll have prep and they'll have flexibility, they won't have as many counters. Now, this is different for Sentinels during FPX and Gen G because they were basically seen as the one who was meant to lose, right? Because they got crushed on day 1 against Gen G. But, they did a lot of prep. And I think now that you're back in the flow of things, you might be preparing some other maps, trying to make sure you expand if you want to go all the way. I think DRX, I'd be a little worried, but I have a feeling they're going to leave the Lotus open, which means out of these maps, I think you might as well ban out the Haven. I don't know if you risk, obviously, I'm not saying this just because they got dumpstered by crew on it, but first of all, I don't think Haven is a go-to pick yet for the current DRX. The two initiators, Foxy9 and Bane, are the two shaky players on this team. As much as I love them, and as I love them when they pop off, both their in-game performance and their on-stage performance. I love the vibe that they bring, but the Sova and the Breach, like, this is such a timing-heavy map. It's such a teamwork-heavy map. It's such a set-play-heavy map. While it's one of those maps that DRX doesn't mind leaving open, it's not a number 1 ban. I don't know if you feel the need to have to leave or have to, leave it open. I changed my mind. I think DRX might pick the Sunset. I'm torn between the Sunset and the Bind, quite frankly. I don't think they picked the Icebox. I think Icebox is one of those maps where DRX doesn't mind playing it. And I think after what we saw from them with the comp change to the Silva against Shenji, there are some clear ways where you could press the pressure points for sure and make Sentinels a little bit uncomfortable again on that map. But we just saw them gain so much confidence on it. Saucy Silva is so good. I don't know if you take risks with that. So I think Sunset or Bind, it's a bit of a toss-up for me personally. But originally I thought Bind just because, okay, we've recently seen it from Sentinels. We saw some big tendencies. Even I could, the tendencies were very, very blatant from that match against FPX. Now, part of it is, I think, because it was clearly tuned against FPX. So I don't know if you want to rely on that information too much. But again, we saw a lot of it, how they play around that A side on the attack, how they rotate, and how they prioritize ult orbs on the defensive side. And while there is an argument But the one thing that's taking up a lot of my brain power right now is the fact that what we're going to talk about today is ult priority for Sentinels. This is something they did really, really well, especially against Shenji. And Bind, it's really hard to try to deny both from either side, right? Generally, at best, you're splitting 1-on-1. At worst, the opponents are taking 2, no matter which side they start on, right? It depends on who's taking the confidence, who's taking the momentum, but generally, if you're taking one, they're going to take the other, right? It's not that easy to block it every time. I mean, you could try to go for spams and things like that, but then maybe you don't have, the numbers, and it gets a little risky. It's basically from either side, depending on how the other side of the map is working, you have a chance to kind of dig in or dig out and then get the orb. Whereas on Sunset, yes, you could argue that these orbs are a bit more conveniently placed for certain sides of the map, right? Attack or defense. They're not always taken. For instance, B orb is not always taken. And if the attackers are taking it, then on defense you can go for the A orb and try to even out, right? So I think there's that one thing as a consideration. The other thing is this used to be a bit of a comfort map for Sentinels. It was one of their stronger maps for sure. And yes, while they did have a very slight comp change coming into stage 2, we haven't seen it in a while. So whether they play that, whether they go back to the old comp, it's going to have been a long time since they've played Sunset. In fact, the last time they played it was June 23rd, and before that it was April 24th. So it has been a very, very long time since they've been playing the Sunset. I think DRX, obviously they've retooled it with the Neon. Now that means Sentinels is going to have some time to brush up on that coming into this match, but I also think DRX might be banking on the fact that Sentinels is probably going to play just with the fundamentals that they have on this map, and if you can identify those, then you should have a good time. Now, moving into the next bans, at that point, I think for Sentinels, I don't know if you really have any reason to leave the icebox open either, just because this is a map where Buzz goes crazy, all right? Buzz and Foxy9 and Bane, like actually the weaker players, some would say, end up going crazy on this map in terms of Foxy and Bane, and then Buzz, he just, like, this is the map where he turns into him. So yes, you counter-identified how to play against Shenji's icebox. You brought the momentum, you brought the confidence, but I also don't know if you need to leave it open, because I have a feeling Sentinels is probably also going to be okay to leave the Abyss open, because now you've seen it 4 times from DRX, and you haven't shown it a single time from your end. So unless it's not prepped at all, or you think you're going to win this best of 3 no matter what, so you want to save this for another rainy day, I think Sentinels is happy to leave the Abyss open, which I think is going to be the same thing that happens for DRX. So I think DRX, I mean, if you're picking this into Fnatic, then I think the confidence is definitely there to leave it as a map 3. So this is my bet. I think I might be overcooking a little bit on the Sunset pick, but with the trends that we've seen so far, I would not be surprised, especially from DRX, with them picking like Abyss against Fnatic, leaving Lotus open. I would not be surprised if these were the picks. Now, before we talk about a couple of these things, I want to mention the Gen G match that Sentinels had, or the rematch, I should say, the rematch of the rematch. Sentinels prepared very well on this match, and I talked a lot about it during the live watch party with our viewers. And so I thought about going back through all of that and touching upon all the small little details that Sentinels was doing so well. And then I figured, nah, here I want to just touch upon some big points that you want to watch out for, and then obviously we'll be going through this match against DRX live on our watch party. So if you're curious why Sentinels played so well and what they were doing, what kind of prep was clearly so well done ahead of time against Shenji, then you can either go check out my watch party VOD, or Sideshow actually did a really nice summary using the Lotus map, so you can go check that out, because a lot of the things he said, I was saying either on the watch party or I agree with, and I've mentioned it after the match. So check out either of those. That'll give you a good rundown. Obviously, Sideshows it's more compact because my VOD is the whole match, but you can also see me losing my mind as Gen G loses the match. Let's talk a little bit, though, about those ult priorities in that match against Shenji. We're taking a look at Lotus, the first map of this knockout or decider match between Gen G and Sentinels. And Sentinels just won the pistol and the anti-eco. Now, obviously, yes, winning all 4 pistols and the anti-ecos is already so helpful, especially against such a closely matched team and such a great team. But on top of that, they win all the bonuses, which is insane. But let's talk about the snowball that they create, and then we're gonna harken back to our analysis that we did of their match coming into this match about, you know, their matchup against FPX. So it's round 3. It's the bonus. Zekken already has his showstopper. Now, Sideshow touched upon this briefly as well, but this is a mix of a little bit of luck, but also really good stacking. After the pistol round, they recognize that Zekken is getting close to his ultimate. It's a very powerful ultimate to open things up on the attacking side of Lotus. It's very, very impactful. I would say it almost has a bit more impact than even the lockdown, just because I think the lockdown is somewhat predictable. It can be prevented, but the showstopper, not so much. So they start to stack it. You know, they make sure that he's getting the plant, he's getting the orb, he's getting the kills, and he does. And the ult is online here for the bonus round, and they're gonna use it to their advantage. We'll just play this back in faster speed here. They'll pressure B a little bit, and then they'll say, okay, hey, we're gonna take the ult orb on C, but it's gonna be given to someone else because he already has orb, or ult rather. And then they will just get the read. Sideshow talks about it. That's a great read on the Poison Cloud, but he's just going to clear close. That already opens things up. But meanwhile, you've started stacking ult points onto Zelsis. And now Zelsis is going through, right? Zekken helping clear the site, but Zelsis getting an extra kill himself. So after the showstopper, that helps secure the site, and that puts them in a very good position to win the round, which they eventually do. You're already now 4 points into the lockdown as well. So already they're making sure that, okay, things are scaling up forward. For the plant, they're going to actually give it to John QT, but, you know, Zelsis already in position, so that's fine, I think, because those are both pretty solid ultimates. Obviously, the lockdown you're going to be able to use more proactively. But anyway, they thought about this ahead of time, and they set this up. Now, we should note that after the spike gets planted, and, you know, it helps that Zelsis isn't the one who planted, because he's in a position to trade now. So he might not have gotten the plant point, but he's in a position to trade. John doesn't get the kill, and Zelsis does. Now, let's take a look at the second half of this match. Let me rewind this a bit. We can watch the disaster that unfolds as well, because it's pretty crucial. Already, you'll note that Zelsis has 3 points after the pistol round, but guess what? That's not what he's going to finish the round with, because he's going to just hold his ground, and here we go! The spray down, 3 more points. And where does that get us? Because plus the death, that's 4 extra points. And if we skip forward, we're going to see that, oh, Zelsis, only 2 points away from his ultimate, already has 7. So while they don't have it online for the bonus, it might as well be. He's going to get a kill instantly with the Outlaw. And now he's got his lockdown. So as soon as, I mean, again, you could argue that anti-eco, yes, is there some luck involved that Zelsis happened to be the one that's getting the spray down? Sure. But the other thing is if it was on A side and Zekken was able to, you know, maybe get more kills on that anti-eco, then he'd be close to a showstopper, or he'd already have a showstopper. So they're set up in ways where they are able to make sure that they get these ults online fast. And Sentinels plays around their ults a lot, especially on the attacking side, because, I mean, it's such a great tool. It helps you really change the tempo of an entire map, an entire match, and kind of gives you that way to dictate the pacing. And so, all right, map 1, you have your ult on the bonus, you're close to it, and you make it for round 4. Coming into map 2, Saucy. We're in our second round. They won the pistol. Again, they're on the anti-eco, and Saucy somehow already has 4 orbs. He got 3 kills and the defuse. Let's see how that pans out for them. Saucy's going to be pushing out. He's trying to go for the orb. He wants to greet it. He's actually going to be able to channel it all the way with the help of his teammates. So that's now 5 points towards his ultimate. Only needs 3 more to get the Hunter's Fury. So he's constantly just looking. He's trying to make sure he isolates angles. Zekken's covering for him, and he's kind of in a position where he's always going to be the one that's looking for trades, right? Tens is the one that's running and going wide, getting info, and Saucy, the one who kind of holds back, is kind of gunning for trades, I should say. And he already gets one from his Hunter's Fury, and then he dies. And with the death, Saucy going to be 1 point away from the Hunter's Fury. Let's skip forward here. All right, so 4, 1, and 2 on the Silva, and guess what's going to happen? he's gonna go for the orb right away. Sends a recon dart. They send a 0 point just to make sure that there isn't anyone pushing too close, keep them at bay. He gets it. His teammates are channeling from above all the way across the belt, and now his Hunter's Fury is online, and this is important, just like the Showstopper was over on Lotus, because guess what's gonna happen? It's a 4v5. You're on a bonus with Sheriffs and a Spectre, and yet there it is. Voila. It's used to help clear angles. It's going to push people out. It's going to get kills. It is massive to make sure that they just gain an infinite economic and momentum advantage. Now let's look at the bonus round of the second half, because Sentinels won both rounds, the pistol and the anti-eco. You've got 2 for Tens, but 4 for Saucy again, 4 for Zekin, 4 for the Viper's Pit. So yeah, you've got options now. Now, it is Icebox, so it's not going to be easy to just greed for the orbs, because they are in very open lines of sight. So we won't, especially from the attacking side. So we won't be seeing that, but basically what we will see is that Sentinels is going to get another ult going into the 4th round of the half. And this is incredible. I mean, it's a Hunter's Fury, for goodness sake. It isn't a cheap ultimate. And they're still able to rack it up thanks to Saucy just hitting some nasty shots. He's 1 away from it. He's going to get an upgraded rifle. And as the round starts, we're going to see Sentinels actually try to deny the ult orb away from Gen G. Texture actually taking quite a bit of damage from it, and Sentinels is going to start creeping up. They're going to use a drone nice and early to try to clear pipes, try to get ahead of it, try to make sure that they can get into the orb or the plant, get that pretty easy peasy. Now this gets red. Lakia, great jump up, great peek and turn around, excellent timing. He's going to get the kill, but that means Hunter's Fury secured. Sentinel still going to win the round, and in the very next round, if we fast forward, Saucy's going to go for a nice early drone. He's going to get a tag, and immediately it is Hunter's Fury time. So it just goes to show that there is, oh, that was really bright, no hesitation when they get their ultimates to send it to get an advantage, right? They're not holding on to ultimates for the just ultimate. They're making sure that they keep up the momentum, that these are things that keep the momentum for you on your side. Now, take a look at Bind versus FPX. Sentinels did not, in fact, win the pistol round. And what do? They group as 5 to take the orb. Tens, who has 2 points. So he has the most, and he has a very impactful ultimate here on this map, or almost any map that he's played on. So they're going to go for a haunt. They have 5 people stacking. This is all to get the orb. If someone pushes out and they get bodied by, a firing range of 4 people, great. But if not, it doesn't matter. They're going for the orb. They leave the spike here. And as he continues this magical journey all the way towards B, he's going to check that there's no one there. And now he might as well just throw more fakes to make sure that he can get across safely and try to draw their attention here on the B site. He's going to get the ult orb, and immediately he TPs over. So that's 2 free ult orbs here. 4 Tens, right? He's now here with the rest of the group. The Gecko Thrash about to come online. They've kept Shower's control, so the TP is easy peasy. Good understanding of the map. And now everybody's still alive. Tens was looking for a close range trade. He's going to be able to peek out, get a kill, and then he dies. And guess what? That means he's 1 away from the Thrash. Now, there is a tech pause here, so we're going to skip forward. So funnily enough, Sentinels actually is the one losing against the bonus this time around. They're down 0-3, but guess what? They made sure that they got the ult point. Tens paid for it with his life, and he's going to have the Thrash. And they use it to wrap around all the way around Showers. So what happened was the Gecko's here, sends the Thrash all the way around. We talked about this before. Gets the stun, and then they're able to continue with their plan. Now Zekin's 1 point away from the Showstopper, and then Tens will soon after get his Thrash again. Overall, this all is a snowball that starts with Tens getting double ult orbs on the eco round. And that's something I want to mention. Sentinels is clearly very conscious of ult cycle and ult economy. So if you're playing on these maps where they could be taking these orbs, I think you need to be very conscious of the fact that, let's say they won the pistol. I think instead of trying to win the pistol round, I mean, obviously you want to win, you don't want to throw it, but rather than winning the pistol round being the most important, I think disrupting it, making sure they're not getting free ult orbs, making sure that you're going in for trades to make sure not one person is just stacking up ult orbs, things like that. Making it chaotic even if you lose the round might be more beneficial, because the ult timings are something that Sentinels utilizes very well, and once they get it going, they actually are able to just continue to stack up cycles to make sure that they have just enough ultimates to get enough rounds of that half. For this next section, let's just listen back to our old video. Is important because Sentinels loves to play their executes as if they're always playing an aggro composition, regardless of what the actual agent makeup is. Take this scene for example. You execute onto C site on Lotus, but instead of relying on holding the site or maybe holding mound for extra lineups or being able to spam through the smoke and the wall, Zekken is consistently digging deep into defense, into CT, to cut them off early. This seems to be a habit thing since they're doing this. Where did we see this before? Not this exact scene, but Zekken holding close. You're currently looking at Sentinels versus Gen G, the very first pistol round on Lotus. The spike is coming into A. Zekken is hiding right around their aggressive toxic screen under the smoke. And then Tens plays aggressively into drop. In that video, I mentioned that sometimes it's Tens, sometimes it's Zekken. But the whole point is that Sentinels does this. They try to take just one small step forward to ruin your timings, to block off the flood, to just isolate. You know, they do this. Now, the positions they dig into are going to differ. Like here, it's drop because that's something that Gen G likes to do. You know, against some other teams like we saw before, it's going to be all the way deep here because that's where they like to go if it's over on the C side. Here against Gen G, it's about waterfall control, so they make sure that they deny that a lot. I mean, Sentinels, they don't plant and sit back. Like, they don't do that. They just don't ever do that. That's not how they play Valorant. And this is something that DRX, hopefully now, is very, very aware of, because I think it was so apparent in this match against Gen G of it just coming right back up. And those are the two big things I wanted to talk about. The ult orbs, the ult economy, building up the ults, watching out for ult cycles, you know, making sure that you have tools in your arsenal to cut off that momentum, and then trying to deny ult orbs, things like that, trying to deny plants, trying to deny, you know, defuses, things like that. Well, obviously defuses you want to deny. That's the silly thing to say. But denying plants, things like that, like even if it's a lost round, I think that's more important than trying to go for the, sometimes, than going for the Hail Mary win against Sentinels. And then once again, watching out for, okay, how aggressive is Sentinels going to get against us on their attack in the post plant. I think those are important things. Outside of that, details for the maps that might be played. If you're more curious about it, you can definitely tune into our watch party. We will be watching the matches live together, both on Twitch and YouTube. And hopefully, DRX has some new stuff cooked up, because they've had a couple extra days than a lot of the other teams. And we'll see. DRX versus Sentinels. I'm going to say it. I'll say it again. Whoever wins this match, I think, goes far. Probably all the way to the grand finals. That's how much I value this matchup for either team. And for me, I'm siding with DRX. If you enjoyed the video, a like and a comment would be much appreciated to help kind of keep this video afloat. And of course, if it's your first time around here, feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this for VCT and other esports in the future as well. That's it for now. I'll see you guys all at the watch party.